right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining the Lead Scoring 101 webinar that we are hosting today. We called it the 101 course because we're just going to go over some general best practice tips and tricks that may be news to you, or it may be just a refresher and you're looking back to maybe readjusting some settings within your profile. All right, so just a quick introduction. So my name is Mimi Noto. I am a product trainer and instructional designer on the Sugar U team. My background is with Sugar Market as well as a few other products here, but I am located in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'll be walking you through this webinar today. All right, so as I said, we are going to be covering just the best practice tips and tricks. And these are just the 10 that either you haven't tried them out before, you may have forgotten about them from your onboarding time. Maybe you set up your profile, it's been working great, but this is a good time for a refresher, whether you are just starting to get into it or it's been a while since you made any adjustments. So here are the 10 that we think are either overlooked or just really important. All right, so haven't figured out the highlight feature or the arrow feature on Zoom webinar, so please bear with me. But the first of the 10 best practice tips and tricks is going to be stick with a contact profile type. All right, so you may have noticed within Sugar Market, there is an account profile type as well as a contact profile type. So with the contact profile type, you will be scoring on an individual lead and contact basis. We recommend sticking with this profile type because it has all the bells and whistles with the lead scoring profile. You have less options with the account and you'll get a better overall score for an account if you are scoring on the individual level and rolling that profile score up to the account level. So let's jump into Sugar Market and see what that looks like. Just gonna switch over. All right, so I'm in my Sugar Market scoring profile. And the first time that you log in, you'll notice that there is a default account scoring profile, as well as a default contact scoring profile. So I've changed mine and we'll be reviewing this profile today, but your onboarding consultant may have told you, hey, let's just go ahead and deactivate this default account scoring profile. And that was great advice because, like I said, we want to score on that individual level and roll up to the account level. Okay, so what does that look like? So we'll actually just take a look at it from the contact level scoring profile. So to access the profile settings, all I need to do is just click into this action menu and click edit. All right, so once I'm in here, there is this checkbox here, okay? So it says use as default account scoring profile. That means that this is the one scoring profile that I can use to roll up to the account level. So that is important if you plan to roll up or if you plan to use multiple contact scoring profiles. But let's say this is your general kind of scoring all over the place profile. For all leads and contacts. So I want to check this box so that, employee A, B, and C, if they are each earning lead scoring points from engaging with Sugar Market content, then each of their scores are going to average and roll up to the account that they belong to, resulting in an account score, okay? And that is actually information that we can map back to the account record and even push back to CRM. If that's what we want to do. So you want to make sure this box is checked, and then you're going to see a map account score option. All right, and we'll get to this part in just a second, but this is how we recommend creating an account score. And later we'll go about deactivating that account scoring profile so you don't even see it anymore. All right, now let's go ahead, pop back. All right. So from here, our next tip and trick is to create custom CRM fields for your scoring profile. Now, this is optional, but this is if you want to push the score back to the CRM, okay, and not just live in Sugar Market. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so we have our mappings. So unless this is turned off, then you would just have these two options. But you can map 3 different field information back to your either their lead or contact record in Sugar Market or to your CRM, depending on what field you map it to. So first, you have just map score to CRM field. What that means is the individual's lead score can map to, it says CRM field, but it could just be a Sugar Market field. So the default for that is this score field that you see right here. But let's say I want to map it to a CRM field. So I synced this lead score field here, and I can see it's a custom field because of this lowercase c at the end. Depending on what, or your CRM field will display in Sugar Market differently based on what external CRM you have integrated with your Sugar Market account, okay? So this may look a little bit different depending on what you use. So right now, I am now mapping this to a custom CRM field. So that means that I can not only display this information in my CRM, but I can report on it there too. Okay, and so what you choose to do with that data and that information is totally up to you. But if you do prefer to, see that information there, this is definitely how you would do that. So you would have them create that field in your CRM, whoever your admin is or however that process goes, and then sync it down. So you'll ask them to create the individual score field. And just a note, it needs to be an integer field type. So it needs to accept numbers. So for the individual score, and then this field is optional as well, the map lead stage summary to CRM field. What that is it is a description of what lead stage threshold they are in, otherwise known as like a scoring group. And a scoring group is it's customized to you, your team, or you decides how many scoring groups you have and how they're defined. But if you want to pass back the actual score, so let's say they have a lead score of 59 and they are in the cold group or the inquiry group, however you have that set up, you can have both of those data points pushed back to your CRM. So then you would have a custom field sync down here. This Fusion score description, it looks custom, so it's a little confusing for our conversation right now, but this is actually the standard field that we recommend if you are using just Sugar Market fields to map. Okay, so if I wanted to, I think I have something in here. So the lead stage C. Okay, so don't have a custom field for this one. And so we'll go ahead. Actually, that is right. I was getting confused with the score. So lead stage is the custom field that then synced from CRM. Again, totally optional, and you can just do the one and not the other. Totally up to you, just if you want to see this information in CRM. And then lastly is map account score. So since this is our default account scoring profile, we're rolling that up to the account level. We may want to see whatever that average score from all of the individuals at the account, what their score adds up to. We might want to see that on the account record in CRM. So again, this account score is that standard Sugar Market field that you can map it to. But if we click in here, I have this custom field here. Okay, so once those fields are created, synced, and available here, you'll be able to map that over and then start reporting or using that data within CRM. Okay, and anytime we make any changes, we want to make sure that we save. All right. Now go ahead and click back. Sorry, I don't have a better process for this. I've seen people go in presenter mode and they swap back like no problem. So I need a little bit of training on that. All right, next is the adjust the additional scoring actions. Okay, so you might be like, what is that? And then once you see it, you might be like, oh, this is the thing that I never touched because it scared me or it seemed really confusing. So this group of settings is extremely helpful if used, but you don't have to use it. Okay. So let's just dive into that one just to cover it. And if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. I'll do my best to explain it all now, but if you have questions, we can come back to it later. All right, so additional scoring actions. This whole section below this title. All right, so what this section is it allows you to degrade a lead or contact score over time as they become inactive with your marketing efforts. So, you know, they stop visiting your website, they stop engaging with your email campaigns, attending events, whatever it might be. If you don't adjust these settings, then your profile will leave the lead or contact score alone. So as is, no matter how many days of inactivity, they eventually accumulate. So this is a marketing lead that either stopped pursuing this project, so, you know, pursuing a service or product that you're offering, or they went with another vendor. We have to assume, or they left the company. You know, could be a whole variety of reasons, but if they become a really qualified lead based on your lead scoring profile and they fall off the face of the earth in your eyes, then we don't want them to keep maintaining that score. So this is when this is going to be helpful. So this first drop down here, okay, we'll walk through them in each drop down at a time. So this will trigger the beginning of the rescore. Okay, so you will essentially just select a number of days that when they hit this many days of inactivity, their record will begin to rescore. So you can view this as like setting a grace period before degrading their score. So let's say every 30 or 30 days of inactivity, okay, something's going on. You know, usually projects move faster than that. So maybe we want to take a look back to what's really going on and give them the benefit of the doubt to eventually rescore and come back to us. Okay, so rescore record after 30 days of inactivity since. How are we going to know that it's been 30 days of no activity? We're going to use this field 99% of the time. There are going to be special circumstances, but this Sales Fusion last activity field exists on the lead and contact level. Okay, so this will identify the amount of days of inactivity that triggers the initial rescore. So this is the standard trigger market field that updates with the latest marketing activity. So it's actually a timestamp value. So if my last day active was May 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern time, that is my Sales Fusion last activity value. And the next time I engage with content, that score or that value will update. Activity that is registered from this field includes web hits, so web activity, email opens and clicks, event registration, attendance, things like that, form submissions, and even landing page activity. Okay, so we want to leave that field, but if you have, a custom field or anything like that, you can do that. But we do recommend this one. And then this next field, so it's saying rescore records after 30 days of inactivity since Sales Fusion last activity, and then score events within an amount of time between then and today. So it's going to be today, whatever the current day is, looking back in time. So this will set a time frame for the scoring profile to look back to essentially review the lead's activity and the amount of points that they received per activity. All right, so this time frame will work like an imaginary rolling window, looking back from the present day, and as the window passes past activity, the individual will lose the amount of points they received for that activity. All right, so if like, let's just say, for example, I set this to like a quarter, so 3 months, 120 days. Okay. So for example, if this is set to 120 days, your profile is going to look back at the last 120 days of the individual's activity in Sugar Market once this 30-day triggers. Okay. So I've been inactive for 30 days based on this field, and now Sugar Market is looking back at my last 120 days in the system, and it's going to continue looking back each day until I complete another action. All right, so that's why it's like a rolling window. So let's say I received 20 points for a form submission 121 days ago. So one day outside of this window, I will lose 20 points. That doesn't mean I go down to 0 necessarily. It means I'm just 20 points less than what I had the day before. Okay, so eventually, if I don't become active again, my score will go down to 0. But as soon as I'm active again, I'm just going to start all over again. Doesn't remove me from the system or anything crazy like that. So it just keeps your current leads and where they are points-wise fresh. All right. And then this last option is, to be honest, not used as frequently as the others, and is pretty specific, but it's saying only score events after the date in the field or the value that's in the field referenced here. So it defaults to do not map. So it defaults to not referencing anything. But basically, this will allow you to select a date field that you want to take precedence over this scoring history window that we set in the previous dropdown. So let's say we reference date modified. Sure, that doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense, but if the value of this date field is less than the scoring history time, your profile would look at this date instead. Okay, so this field would likely be custom. A good example would be like a renewal date field. So no, this person is not active prior to their renewal date. Okay, there is an asterisk next to both of these drop downs. So here and here. And basically what that means, and it is explained right here, but it's just indicating that if both of these fields are used, then the value that is closest to today's date will be used instead. Okay, so whichever one comes first. Before we move on, but just keep in mind that the settings that we reviewed here all work together. So please plan strategically based on your team's needs. These additional scoring actions do not need to be used, but they are helpful with making sure your high scoring leads are currently interested and engaged with your content. And then one more thing with this is that the window of time should relate to your sales cycle. So the amount of time that a sales rep would consider a lead dead. So if that window of time is greater than this or less than this, maybe try and reflect this here. Okay. All right. Like I said, please share any questions in the chat if you want to cover on that and the Q&A section. All right. Next, we have large thresholds, lower points. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that we have two different kind of sections of the profile that we want to set that really work together. But the first is your thresholds. Those are your scoring groups. How do we categorize our leads based on the number of points that they have designated from the scoring rules that we set up with point values. Okay, so we want to have large thresholds, so a large range that will be considered per group, and then keep the points that we're assigning lower in each rule. So let's see what that means. If it'll let me out of here, there we go. Okay, so underscoring actions, you have your lead stage thresholds. So what I have set here is the 3 most common lead stage thresholds that you'll see when you're following or when you're getting started with lead scoring. But your group names and ranges will differ most likely based on your team's approach to lead scoring, or you may have 4 thresholds or even 2. It totally depends on you guys. I would just recommend not going crazy with it or overthinking it. But back to the point in mind, keeping the thresholds larger. What I mean by that is the beginning range and the end range. Okay, so my cold group is set for 1 to 75. Now, bear in mind, this isn't exactly what you have to do. This is just an example of a threshold that someone might look at and be like, oh my gosh, they're going to be considered a cold lead until they have 75 points. Like, what if that takes forever? This is where a little bit of strategy comes into play. Just because they're called a cold lead doesn't mean that they are not active. It just means that, like, you're playing hide and seek. They're not close to finding the person hiding or, becoming a marketing qualified lead, but they are, just slowly becoming engaged. So they have low engagement in terms of, comparing them to maybe somebody who's a little bit more active or has been around for a while, or even like a hot lead. So we want to keep it from 1 to 75. Reason being is that you have 1, 2, 3, 6 tabs that are available to apply scoring rules. Some of these are incredibly specific, like I want to assign a scoring rule for people who click this specific link in this specific campaign, or I want to assign points for people who click any link in any email campaign. Depending on how many campaigns you're sending and how big these lists are, somebody could click a whole lot of links, come back, click that link again, make that score again, and eventually generate this crazy score in a very little amount of time. So basically what I'm trying to say is that people are going to score up if they are interested or even vaguely interested a lot quicker than you think they are. So you want to monitor these leads and make sure that they are actually ready to talk to a sales rep by the time they become a hot lead or a marketing qualified lead. All right. So let's just walk through one example. So web activity. So you guys have your web tracking script applied on your website. Okay. So that means we're tracking web activity and we can apply scores to those known records browsing on your site. So we always recommend having, if you want to score web activity, a point of 1 for any visit. So any page they click to, they are going to receive 1 point. You could adjust this score as well, but let's say I come to your site, you know who I am, it's known visit on your site. I click to 5 pages. I'm clicking around, I'm click happy. So I receive 5 points. Then I go to this page that it's called Why Sugar. It's this section of the website. And we specifically want to assign additional points to people who visit this page because it's important. That means they're interested in comparing us to other companies or products. So I click to this page. I receive 1 point because it's any page with an additional 2 points. So I had 5 before, and now I have an additional 3. That's 8 points from one browsing session. Does that mean I'm legitimately interested or I am ready to talk to a sales rep? Maybe not. Maybe we want to hold on to them just a little bit longer. And that's just with a score of 1 and 2. Okay. So just consider, oh, and then I also have for a single session, I visited at least 6 pages, I get a score of 3. I'm actually at 11 points. Okay, one session, 11 points. That is when we say, consider how quickly this can go. All right. Okay. Next, add appropriate threshold actions. So within each threshold, you can have actions trigger off when somebody moves through the thresholds or the scoring groups. So I have become a cold lead because I have, opened an email, or I clicked to the website, or I filled out a form. Now you can have actions come off, a whole variety of them. So when we say appropriate, it just means consider, or don't just add an action just because you can. Be thoughtful about it and think about what is really necessary. So we're going to walk through an example of different actions you can have in each scoring group and why I added them that way. So go ahead and click back. All right, so I'm going to click back to my scoring actions, and each group has their own set of actions. So for my cold group, I can come in here and click edit. All right, so I set up my scoring actions down here. Now, since they're cold leads, I could just let them go about their way, generating their points, and no actions could occur. And so I set up what I call like an internal action within the threshold. So I'm doing something with these leads, but it's not necessarily, they don't necessarily know it. So we'll run through the list of options, but just know for this example, I'm adding them to a distribution list that I can use in a variety of ways. So to add an action, I'll click through here, click add, and I can see my list of actions through this dropdown. So first two will come in handy a little bit later, but I can either create a new record in my external CRM, or I could push to update an existing record. Now, you might say, which one do I use? I don't know whether they exist in my CRM or not. This is kind of running in the background. You can add them both simultaneously just to kind of cure or answer any questions that may have been in your head. But this is what you do. You want to only push those qualified leads back. So we'll get to this a little bit later, but this is what that means. I can update a contact or a lead in Sugar Market using a template. So if I don't have these settings enabled, this will just update the record in Sugar Market only. And basically, we have these internal templates that you can use to update a field specifically with a value that you add to the template. So this action and task and opportunity all require a template. We're not going to go through that today, but if you need more information on that, let me know and I can send you some information after this call. But basically, you can use a template to update a lead record, add a task to that record, or even add an opportunity. Okay. Next, you can add somebody to a distribution list. So how you would do this is the list would need to be created beforehand. So you can either manually create it or add them to a list that you imported using the import wizard. So you can add them to a list, or you can add them to a Nurture 1.0 or Nurture 2.0 campaign. And then you can even remove people. Okay, so this will come in handy because when somebody moves to a new threshold, it doesn't remove the action from them. So if I'm added to a Nurture because I'm in the cold lead threshold, and then I become a warm lead, that doesn't automatically remove me. So you need to be strategic when you are adding and removing, so people aren't receiving content that does not, or even being a member of a list that they shouldn't be on. Okay, get to that in just a little bit. You can send a one-off trigger email to them. You could send a score alert to the contact owner, or you can alert a specific user, doesn't have to be the contact owner. or even a group of users by role or geo. Okay, so these are all the actions that you can do, but let's say I want to add them to a nurture. Select the nurture name, and then even choose the step that I add them to. If there's only one, that means it's going to add them to the start step. Okay, and then I will click save, but I'll just go ahead and click cancel for now. So what I decided to do with my cold leads is I didn't want to do nothing. I wanted to just add them to a list just in case there was a particular campaign or nurture that I thought could ramp them up a little bit or may be of interest. Maybe it's a product promotion or we're highlighting a specific feature release or, anything that might make sense. So cold leads, adding them to a distribution list. I'll save and return. And now for this example, my warm group, everyone who has a score of 76 to 200, go ahead and click edit. All right, so I am going to then remove them from the cold leads list. Okay, remember it doesn't happen automatically. They're no longer a cold lead, so they don't belong on that list. And then I'm going to add them to a nurture. So I have a specific nurture targeted toward these warm leads who I think they just need a little push to get more information and move up to become a hot lead. All right, save and return. And then lastly, we have our hot leads. We have done our job. They are very interested. They have engaged with at least 201 points of activity interest. So I want to pass them to sales. Okay, so I'll click edit. And I could remove them for the nurture, but I want to add the lead record that do not exist to my external CRM, or I want to push to update a record who already exists. Okay, so they have been passed to sales and it is in their hands right now. It's a marketing qualified lead, will hopefully become a sales qualified lead as well. So you could do a whole lot with these actions, but it's really important to just set up actions that make sense to your team and your business processes. All right. Now we'll go ahead, click back here. All right, so those are our first 5. Now we're going to move into some more that are a little bit more straightforward, but the first of it is going to be the data column tab. This is, to me, the forgotten tab, okay? It can be your best friend, your handy helper, if you strategically set this up. And this is going to look different to everybody. Basically, you can apply bonus points based on your perfect customer persona. So who are you guys targeting? It might be, right now we're targeting this industry or this, number of employees at a company, whatever it might be, or it could be all time. I want to make sure that we are talking to decision makers, whether that be based on their title or, some other indicator. But just setting these up so that you can boost somebody's points so you can talk to them sooner. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so the data column is the very last tab. So I have an example set here. So I can only set up, because this is a lead and contact scoring profile, I can only reference fields on the contacts table, which remember is lead and contact information. So for this example, I just want to add data columns for the title field, because I want to make sure that we're targeting decision makers. So those higher ranking individuals. The decision makers that you reach out to or speak with, or your sales team, I guess, more specifically, may depend on what type of products or services you offer. So if you are, a software or a technology company, you may want to identify your IT managers or your directors of technology. So you want to make sure that you are applying those bonus points if those are the individuals engaging with your content. Okay. So I have one set up to where I apply 15 bonus points or extra points if somebody who has a title containing the words vice president and they completed an action. So let's say they opened an email that we sent them, they got some points for that, and then they happen to have vice president in their title, so they would receive the 2 points or whatever from opening the email, plus an additional 15. So they may have been a warm lead, now they're a hot lead, or a cold lead, and now they're a warm lead. You don't know what that boost can really do for them. So let's go ahead and just set one up. So go ahead and click new. This table name is grayed out, so only contacts can be selected. And now you want to select the field that you want to reference for this. Again, we're going to stick with just title. And the field that you reference here may differ based on what fields you're using, but we'll just use that standard title. And then the value. I can select any number of these operators, okay? So equals, contains, begins with, ends with, greater than or equal to. This doesn't really make sense for this example, but let's say it contains, let's say IT or, manager. Let's do that. Okay, so their title contains manager. They are making decisions about something, all right? So although this one might be a little bit vague, let's maybe give them a score of 10, okay? Since these are bonus points and the whole point is to really push them up, to boost their score, to talk to them sooner, you can be flexible with this. This is not as important, I guess, in my mind, as the individual, actions that they're taking themselves. We are assigning it to them. So you can be generous if you want. Just make sure that the status is set to active and click save. All right, and so I can add any number of data column points that I want, so I can add additional title or even other fields to reference here. So all these can really do is help you. So just use them. Think about who is our target or our ideal customer. Identify who those people are and break it down on like a field value level and apply data column points. Okay, doesn't hurt. And if you have questions, please ask. All right, next. Don't overlook wildcard scoring. All right, so there's 2 sections of SugarMarket lead scoring that allow for wildcard scoring. This exists in your email campaign scoring as well as your event scoring. What this means is I can apply like a generic scoring rule based on a campaign or event name. So if you are using proper naming conventions, you are really organized with your namings of your campaigns or events, this could apply to multiple campaigns with just one scoring rule, okay? So let's take a look at that. We'll look at this on a campaign level for now, but just know you can do it with events too. So email campaigns, you have lots of different options. You can score for specific campaigns, generic, so all email clicks, all email opens, regardless of what campaign it is. The most specific, to where you can apply a score for clicking a link in an email campaign, and then your wildcard campaign. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click new. So the rule type is I can do one for opens and clicks. So let's say I want to apply a scoring rule for anyone who opens a, let's say it's a webinar invite email. Okay, so webinar invitation open. So I invite them to a webinar through a email campaign. And now based on my target, this is going to reference a keyword from your email campaign name. All right, So this is where you need to think every time I send a webinar invitation through Sugar Market, I should like stay with the naming conventions because it's going to look for an exact value, but only a portion of the campaign name. It doesn't need to be the entire campaign name. So let's say I start all webinar invitations the same. They all start with just webinar invite, and then I get more specific after that. I need to begin the target with a percent symbol. It doesn't explain this here, so pay attention. But a percent symbol, webinar, and then I have to put that percent symbol in any spaces between words. Okay. Webinar. I think I said invite. If I didn't, whoops. Okay, and then a percent symbol to close. Now, every time I create an email campaign and I send it through Sugar Market, it begins with webinar invite, or wherever it is in the campaign name. It's just going to look for a portion of it. And somebody opens it, they're going to receive an additional score of 3 points. All right. So this kind of works like that generic campaign scoring where it's applying to multiple campaigns with one rule, but is more targeted based on the campaign name. Okay. And your wildcards may change over time as they, your practices change or your, whatever it may be. So just keep those in mind. These may need refreshing over time. And then I'll click save. So, all right, let's click back. We just have a couple more. All right, now this one is very straightforward. Delete scoring rules that are no longer relevant or needed. Okay, so it's good to kind of let your lead scoring profile run for a bit to actually get good data back. Is this working? Are the thresholds too big, too small? Am I assigning too many points, too little points? Do I need to add more rules or do I need to delete rules? Okay, so maybe your branding changed or you're running something new and so it deprecated something old. Make sure you're deleting rules that you don't need anymore, just to kind of clean things up or stop assigning points for things. All right, so it's really easy to delete a scoring rule. You just click into your profile. Let's say we're not doing this customer webinar keyword anymore. I'll just click through the action menu and click delete. Then it'll be a little pop-up here and click OK. All right, now it is up to date. And then I can go through and do the same thing through each individual tab. All right, so keep your profile clean. All right, and then the same thing goes with profiles that are no longer in use. You might be thinking, I only have one profile, that's hard enough to manage. Totally get it. But let's say you are marketing for several departments or business units, or you want to create specific targeted lead scoring profiles for, quarterly campaigns that you're running. It may, be something that you want to try, but, once that campaign is over or this business unit is marketing for itself, you don't need that profile anymore. Or you want to get rid of that pesky default account scoring profile. I'm going to save and return. Actually, I'm going to click back into here. There's one thing that you can do. You can either deactivate it from inside the scoring profile by unchecking the status box, uncheck or recheck, easy enough. Or I could hover over, click through the action menu, and it does say delete, but it just deactivates. Okay, so it doesn't go away forever. You can reactivate it at a later time. So if that's something that you're worried about, don't be. All right, I'll show you how to access it after. So let's click delete. Sorry, my Zoom bar is blocking it, but there is a pop-up message and I'll click OK. It no longer is there. Now, the perfect example of people definitely wanting to deactivate or remove scoring profiles from this screen is when you first start using Sugar Market and you're playing around with your scoring profiles, a lot of people create new scoring profiles and end up with like 20 of them. Okay. And then you're like, I don't even know which one I'm using. They all have the same name, or I didn't change it from new scoring profile. So if that's the case, follow that same step, delete it, but it can be accessed again by clicking the show all profiles checkbox. Okay, so see, I had 3 more that I can see the status is inactive, and I can hover over, edit, and reactivate. Okay. And now there's one more point that I want to make, or one more tip, I suppose. The last one may be the most important one for, the overall organization. Educate your sales team. Make sure that your sales team is aware of what makes a marketing qualified lead, any changes that you make over time, and what your expectations are for when a new lead is created in your CRM and it's assigned to them and you need them to reach out. A really major issue that a lot of marketing teams face is that they are passing these leads to sales and they are getting forgotten. They are falling through the funnel, whatever sort of business, nightmare you can think of. Okay, so you worked really, really hard to score up these leads and to treat them properly, educate them, inform them on your products and services. The last thing you want them to do is not get contacted or go, unnoticed. So educate your sales team when you first create your profile and when you update it, and what you guys are targeting, how you're speaking with them, and what they have experienced so far. Okay, so that's the final tip and trick that I have for you now. So let's move on to questions. Let's see here. All right. So I'll give you a couple minutes just to add some questions here. I'll pop into the Q&A as well. Okay, so got one. It said, I don't have an external CRM, but I want to create fields for additional scoring profiles. Okay, that is a great question. So if you are just using Sugar Market as a standalone and you want to create additional scoring profiles, one thing you may have noticed is that you can only use the field one time. You can't reference the same field in more than one profile. So what you would do is you would create that field in Sugar Market. So you can create those custom fields, and then I would be specific with what it's called. So if you had a, let's say gardening center, let's say Home Depot is a customer, okay? For whatever reason, they're only using Sugar Market. Okay, they want to have they want to market for their gardening center, their appliance center, whatever it may be. And you want to create a scoring profile for all of those different centers. You would want to create fields that are easy to identify. So I would say garden center score, appliance center score. Create those field names, which is super easy. You can do it if you are a Sugar Market admin, and then map to that field in your profile. Okay. All right, I didn't see anything else. I'll leave it open for just a second. Throw it in the chat if you have any. All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for attending today's webinar. Lead Scoring 101 may have been all things you've heard before. There may have been a couple new tips and tricks. We're always happy to help, though, when it comes to anything Sugar Market, but lead scoring specifically is a conversation you want to continue always. And if you guys have specific questions on it, please let us know. You can reach out to us at, I'll throw it in the chat actually, university@sugarcrm.com. Okay. Oh, I only sent it to, there we go, university at sugarcrm.com. Okay. Please reach out if you need us. And if not, check out our content on our site. And if you have questions about anything, let us know. Thank you guys for coming.